Shimelle Laine, and this is the second little twist on Sketch to Scrapbook page. I'm using some other scrapbookers' methods to start my page instead of my own sketch for a little bit of preparation for an episode of the Paper Clipping Roundtable. So I'm recording this before the episode, but you're going to see it after we've taped that episode of paper clipping. So we're going to be talking about starting points and sketches and all sorts of things like that with Noell Hyman and Allison Davis. So I've done one video already. The video that came just before this is a layout based on one of Allison's sketches, and now I'm using Noelle's technique, which is not a sketch, so to speak, but she calls it a flexible template. So I've linked the video so that you can see what flexible template from Noelle I'm using for this, the video that's my inspiration. And basically the idea is that flexible templates are go-to designs that Noelle knows that she can use, but also you can customize them each time, so they're not going to always look the same. So the version that I'm using has, let's see if I can describe this with a little bit of visual here. Both of the examples that she gives are 8.5 by 11, but I'm going to be making a 12 by 12. And the photo is at the top, one or more photos, in the top half of the page. And then there's a box at the bottom of the page that includes the pattern paper and the journaling. And then she shows that you could place the title at the top, you could place the title in the middle, you could place the title at the bottom. You could have just pattern paper here, or you could include the journaling here. You could move the journaling around the box, you could journal along the top of the photos. And she actually makes this into a narrower rectangle here in the middle of the page. So I'm starting with these two photos. I'm definitely going to have to crop them if I'm going to keep that design. So I've chosen two that have a little room for me to take a bit off the edge so that I can have something a little bit more like this. They'll be a bit more even, but to give you an example, so I'm going to be leaving a frame all the way around the edge. And then I'm going to have pattern paper and journaling and my title all in this space so that I'll have this sort of rectangle with the frame all the way around the edge. And hopefully along the way it'll be easy for me to put together, but it will also be a very different look to Noelle's example pages, because every time you start with a flexible template it should come out a little bit differently. So I'm using these three pattern papers, one from Here and Now, one from My Mind's Eye, Find Your Wings and Fly, and one from Dear Lizzie, Lucky Charm. And two 4x6 photos that I'm going to crop down a little bit so that I have a border around the edge. In adapting Noelle's design from an 8.5 by 11 to a 12 by 12, I decided to keep this box in the middle a square rather than a rectangle in this case. So it's the same height as width, so I just crop the photos and then use their size to find the right size for border all the way around the edge. Then use a little bit of the reverse of this pattern paper here to have a little colorful border in the middle, and then that bit of pink to tie it in with the background paper. So here's the basic format of everything, and I've decided that I kind of like to soften this a little bit, so I'm going to round the corners just here at the bottom and then attach this to the page. I could round the corners at the top, but at the moment I'm thinking I would prefer the square at the top and the rounded at the bottom, just for a little bit of variety. I can always come back and round the top corners later if I decide that that's what it needs. And then I'm going to use the dark at the bottom of the page so that it fades from light at the bottom, light at the top, dark at the bottom of the page, and then try to get this nice and even in the middle of that background. From here, I have the bottom of the page left to add my title and my journaling and bring in some embellishment. So I'm going to pull out the different pieces that I have and see what's going to fit where. Instead of writing my journaling on top of the floral paper, I added it to the card that goes in the pocket and then attached that to the page so that the top of the pocket is even with the bottom of the photos. Now these tags come with gray twine around them already, and I was just going to take it out of a knot and tie it into a bow, and as soon as I clipped the knot away, this is what I was left with. So it turns out Cutting that twine is not a good thing at all, so I'll have to find something else here, maybe some pink twine or ribbon or something. And then I've just done my title with tiny little letter stickers. Those are from the I Heart summer sheet. I've used this alphabet and this one a couple times, but I hadn't used this smaller block alphabet, so I started with the darker alphabet there. And then the longer sticker strip. I thought these went well together because they're essentially the same or a very similar font, just one in a strip and one little blocks. Now I want to add some embellishment on top of this pocket and not use the hello, and I want to make it a little bit dressier on top there, and I wanted to bring in a little bit more of this electric lime color. So these are both from the same sticker sheet, this one, and what I thought was that this little banner, because it has this space here, would look great over the top of something that's a bit round, like this little rosette sticker. And the rosette is definitely big enough to cover that spot that says hello. And then I can add the memories banner on top of that. And then I'll have 2 points of that lime green color. So it would be great if I could find another spot on the page to bring in a third bit of that color so that I have a bit of a triangle that brings that, that bright contrasting color together. So looking at what else is on the sheet, I have a green mustache. I have another little text banner. It shows up here and a little bit here. So I'll see what I can find to work, and maybe I could even find something that would work with this pink color here to bring in on the top of the tag. I think my best choice with another bit of that green is this text block. I did think about if I could try and make the mustache into just kind of a swirl by layering things over the top, but couldn't really find a great way to make that happen on this layout with all the straight lines that are involved in the design. So I figured I would go with the piece that has the straighter lines and bring it up here. It's these two people that I know in the photo and not this person up here in the corner, so I'm just going to cover a little bit of her up and add in that green there. And I've got room that if I wanted to keep the picture pretty much intact, I could bump it up to the top of the page, but I prefer the pink frame. So now I have 3 bits of that green, which is a little bit more balanced. And I wanted to add the little LDN 2012 that I've put on all of the pages in this album, but I didn't want it to be really big, even though I'm using these larger letter stickers. I couldn't spell it out in these same ones because I've already used all the ends, but I could use them for the 2012 and then did the same color on top. So I like that they're larger, but they're more subtle than the high contrast small letter stickers. Now there's just a few tiny little things. I did add some pink twine up here. It's been bothering me that there's this crown motif when I'd rather have something that's not that particular motif, because just before this in my album comes all the pages from the Jubilee, which do have crown motifs, so I kind of want a little bit of a separation from that to this, and I thought I could just tuck in this sticker behind and cover up the crown with this little flower, which has a newsprint background, and since these are the story and the people in the photos are from our rehearsals and our costume was covered in newsprint, so that actually is a tiny little thing that makes sense. And then I have one little problem where somehow in moving things around I've gotten some ink or glue or something on top of this pocket, and I'd like to cover that up. So I'm going to use some enamel dots for that, and then it'll just be our little secret that it's there. I thought the lighter pink was a nice mix, but I wanted to make sure it didn't look too out of place, so I added one more little word strip to make this kind of a set of 3, and that's a better match to the pale pink in this pack. So I'm just going to do couple little groupings, and I was tempted to go over the edge, but I need to remember that it needs to stay on the pocket itself so that you can still take the tag out. But it can come over the edge here perhaps. Oops, and then maybe something a little bit more even down here at the bottom. think that's probably enough. I know there's actually quite a bit of space here where there's not anything else going on. I could have figured out a way to put the journaling on top here, so if you're working with different supplies and don't have a pocket and you'd rather write it on there, of course it'll work. That's the beauty of Noelle's flexible template system, that it's really easy to move things around. But because I used that pocket, I have quite a bit of journaling that's here, and that would be really hard to read if I'd written it on the flowers. Really easy to read on the grid paper there. So I like the fact that there's just this bit of open pattern, and I think that way I'm not crowding the photos too much. So I'm going to go ahead and call this one finished. So I hope that you will listen to the episode on the paper clipping roundtable. I'll be sure to link it up on the blog, and I hope you enjoy that little departure. And then when I return with my next Sketch to Scrapbook page video, I'll be going back to the normal pattern of my own sketches. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.